Welcome back to the Always Aggressive podcast. I'm Corey Palmer alongside Tanner Lipset, head coach Tony Ersland, and Earl Smith from the Open Mat joins us this week. Earl, really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks. Love getting the opportunity to talk wrestling, especially Purdue wrestling program that I really like following.
Like we said, Earl, appreciate the time. You've got one of the upstart sites here in the wrestling world. Tell us a little bit about your background in wrestling and how it became your daily love and your work.
Sure. So I'll try to make this concise as possible, but I didn't come from a wrestling family. My mom's brothers are both football players, and one of them is 12 years older than me. So as I'm 4 or 5 years old, I'm following him around, and he actually got dragged out to the wrestling mat by one of his coaches who said, if you don't wrestle, you're not going to start next year. So him and a bunch of his friends, they wrestled for 2 years, and he was a state qualifier, did well for himself. But, I was a 5-year-old running on the mats, and, the guys are throwing me around. And so at a wrestling match, one of his matches, a guy came up to my mom and asked if the little kid's wrestling already, and she didn't think that 5-year-olds wrestled. Growing up in Virginia, we didn't have the tradition that some of the other states in the Midwest have, but somehow in the mid 80s, before the internet, she found a wrestling club, and I took to it, and continued throughout my high school career. And I think that since I didn't have that dad that wanted me to be the state champion or the Olympic champion or anything, pressure like that it was just always something I loved and, love to this day. And it was always me wanting to do it. So, fast forward after college, just started going into my old wrestling room, just kind of being a practice dummy. And it kind of progressed from there into a full-time coaching position. My work changed, and getting to practice at 3:00 every day just wasn't possible. And so this was the summer of 2007. So I said, well, I want to do something to be involved with the sport, and started a website called d1collegewrestling.net. And I worked all summer to, research this. And at the time, Flow Wrestling was just Martin out of his van. It wasn't, nobody really knew what to make of it at that point. And, Jason Bryant was kind of leaving Intermat at that time. So I thought college wrestling was kind of underserved at that point in time. And so I spent all summer working on this website, and at some point I'm like, this is it. I can't do any more with it. So I went and sent an email to every coach and SID in the country I could find and said, this is my website. This is it. I'm going to cover wrestling. And I joke, this was, before we had email synced up to our phones and stuff like that. So I was out at dinner with my wife at Pancho Villa's Mexican restaurant. And, I told her about, I hadn't told her about what I was doing. I told her the whole spiel. And, I'm kind of I'm kind of the idea guy, and she's like, I like to say she's the implementer. So her first question was, what are you going to do with this? And I said, I don't know. And she asked me like 2 or 3 more questions, and I think I don't know was my answer to all of those questions. But I went back, right away after dinner, ran back to my desktop and checked my emails. And the first one I got was from Kerry McCoy, who was the head coach at Stanford at the time. And he had a, really good, really great feedback. Says, the lineup's actually going to look like this. This guy's probably going to bump. This guy's going to red shirt. Here's our schedule. It hasn't been released. Here's a couple of recruits that, we signed late. Keep up the good work. And that was just like fuel for the fire. And after about a month or so, I came back to my wife and said, okay, well, at some point, this is going to either lead to, I don't know, somebody paying me to run this website, making money off of advertising, or it's just going to lead into some other way to have full-time employment in the wrestling industry. So after 10 years of doing this on the side and working full-time at a couple other jobs, actually I kind of threw in the towel on it almost. And my kids were getting older, getting into sports, and I saw that the open mat needed somebody to do high school rankings, and that kind of reinvigorated me a little bit, because you can follow college and you can follow the top 100 recruits, 150 kids, and but when you're doing high school recruits or high school rankings, you've got to know the 6th place kid in Illinois or your California state qualifiers. Like, you really got to go deep with it. So that kind of was a new challenge for me, and that was the 2017-18 season. And after that season, the old editor Alex Steen left to take a job outside of the wrestling industry, and then I slid in as the site editor and have been there ever since.
So
that's
go
good.
ahead.
I tell you what, guys, thank goodness for guys like you too, Earl, because what you said is absolutely true. To do rankings and to know the sport, you got to do a deep dive. Like you said, that 6th place kid in Illinois, and I think people appreciate that we have more people. I mean, Flo's been instrumental, like you said. The growth of what they've been doing has been great for the sport, but there's a lot of people out, doing the things like you're talking about and doing a great job, and it's healthy for the sport. I think it's healthy for where we're at and the growth that we're trying to promote. So that's a great thing that people like you understand. You got to do a really deep dive into this if you're going to do a good job.
Earl, you alluded to the fact, you brought up rankings, and so that's a fun transition. That's a beast. The fact that you guys are doing high school and college,
Yeah.
and the open mat's really cool. You guys take it even a deeper dive. You do regional high school rankings. You do D2. You do D3. You guys really spread the love out and go into all areas of wrestling. You got into women's wrestling. You did women's recruiting rankings for the first time this year. I mean, how big of a bear is it to wrestle, to do all those things and to get them all organized and to have them out there in a respectable fashion, like something that you feel proud that you can stand behind?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because there's the quote, you find something you love, you're never gonna feel like you work a day in your life. And I've had this job since I think it was May of 2018, and I feel that way. And I was a 911 dispatcher for 5 years doing 12-hour shifts, and my wife says that I probably work more here than I did then, but it's I don't think much anything of the time. It's fun for me, it's interesting, so it doesn't seem like much. Now talk to me last year right before the conference weekend, when I'm trying to knock out 7-8 previews within the same timetable, and that was rather challenging, but it's also a challenge. And I also like to think of the people that we're covering in the sport, where they're going out and just leaving their bodies out on the mat, and the least I could do would be turn in a respectable effort with the rankings we put out.
Corey, I got a fun question for you.
Yeah.
And then I want to hear their answers. Who do you think watches more wrestling in a given week with video and so on and so forth? Ersland or Earl?
I'm going to guess Earl.
You think
Earl's
Earl
got a lot
does?
more ground to cover.
It might be. The man has to cover more divisions. You know what I mean? Although, hey, I've always said I need a clicker, right? In a given year, I'd like to just take a calendar year, and every time I watch a match, whether live or video, just hit a clicker, and it's got to be in the tens of thousands, before we're done. So yeah, that's an interesting thing. Earl, how much time do you spend? I mean, do you, besides just results, do you watch video? Is that something that you take the time to do a lot? I mean, and how do you kind of view that or use it, I guess?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. Still think maybe a college coach would probably watch more than me. I don't know, but yeah, I'll do it. I mean, for fun Friday night on the Big Ten Network, and then trying to scan if I see a notable upset or a close match between two guys that I didn't watch live. I want to see how it played out, and or if there's a freshman and I haven't seen much of him, want to see exactly what he's made of, what he's got. So yeah, there's a lot of maybe not watching a full dual meet start to finish, but jumping between all these matches.
You bring up upsets, and you bring up we're still in the throes of these rankings and whatnot. When you go to watch those upsets, how much does the type of upset or how the match unraveled affect your rankings, or is it or do you take it as a straight win-loss deal?
Oh, that's an excellent question. I like to watch what I can, and there are matches where you see it. I'll say 2 weeks ago when Devin Schroeder got pinned. That's a match where I feel like it probably could have played out differently. It was kind of a weird situation. I don't know if it's necessarily indicative of the level between the two kids. So for that one, I kind of gave a little bit of leeway as far as, the results of the rankings after that. Now, I don't know if that's 100% fair because I can't do that with every single match that happens, but I try to do that.
Well, I think this year too, it's presented so many different problems. I mean, you have to rank the kids, as you said. I mean, according to some wins and losses, situationally, it is different for each one. But think about COVID now. Kids could be coming off, a 10-day quarantine. Who knows if their program was shut down? Were they able to train? You take Penn State, clearly coming off of their 2-week pause and competing this weekend against, what was it, Indiana and Northwestern. What are they going to be in a month if they can train regularly through? I think there's just so many. In particular, this year, it will be really interesting to see not only how we seed at Big Tens, but how a lot of different results play out at all levels. Michigan's not wrestling in high school yet. What's that do for those kids? And we have a kid signed, Stony Buell, who's really good. He's going to seek his 4th state title, and his team's going to seek their 4th team title. But they're not wrestling. You know what I mean? And how do you handle those situations for national rankings? It's such a crazy year, as we know, and it's playing havoc at probably all levels. Yeah,
I mean, I was actually just talking to somebody on Twitter about this. Normally I'm pretty, I don't like to give too much. I don't want to say I don't want to give too much credit to freshmen, but I'm more hesitant as far as moving freshmen in the rankings quickly. It was funny because I think last year, Kendall Coleman jumped really high, really fast, based on his opening weekend. And, he beat, I think, 3 national qualifiers and another stud freshman in Will Lewan. So, he deserved it, and then he proved it along the way. But, this year, I feel like we're having to do, make more big jumps in the rankings where, a lower seeded guy beats a higher guy. There's not going to be all these opportunities along the way to, strengthen your record at the Cliff Keen or,
Right.
some of these tournaments. So, you got to deal with the results we're seeing. And so, again, I think there's a lot more freshmen that I've had in the rankings, higher up the rankings, a month into the season, though you could also say we're in February, however you want to look at it.
Yeah, it cuts both ways, right? We barely started, but we're almost done. It's been, Ersland told me the other day, he said, and I don't know what the count's at now, but there was only like 50 days left in the season. And I have to imagine it's probably down in the 40s. It's down in the 40s now. So it's going to happen fast and furious. Kind of as Corey and I were talking about it this morning, you talk about the small sample size.
Yeah.
And you talk about like who guys, you look at a kid like Nick Aguilar from Rutgers.
Yeah.
Obviously, you look at what he did last year. Kid can wrestle. He's very solid on the national scene. Definitely deserving of a national ranking. Hasn't won a match yet. But also, like, 4 of his 5 matches are against top 10 guys.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, man, like how do you weigh that out?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's funny because he's a guy. He was the number 1 guy that I was kind of thinking about for that, and there's really no precedent for this type of thing. So it's kind of on a case by case basis, but it's the guys in the Big Ten, it's strange. I was looking at your schedule from last year, and you had the Michigan State Open, you had, some duels of the journeymen, and, some other, MAC teams, and you could, I'm sure you're scheduling that with a particular reasoning and the strategy in mind. And now you're just jumping into the Big Ten schedule. So a guy like that can be 0-4 and still a really high quality wrestler. I'm eager to see, how the NCAA qualifications play out, because we could see these guys that make the national tournament that have 3 wins on the year, and they're a top 20, 25 wrestler.
Yep. I mean, that's been something I've actually we've talked to the team about a lot, just going in, because routinely, we're going to wrestle 9 matches, and we've only got 4 left. We've got 2 this weekend, and then single duels each weekend after, before we're done. And a lot of years 5-4 in the Big Ten. If that was your Big Ten season, that means you had a pretty strong season. You were a top 15 kid, maybe even a top 10, depending on who you had wrestled. And so we talk all the time, it can't just be what's like a fixed mindset, right? Like, fixed is just, did I win or did I lose? This has got to be more about growth along the way, truly, because going into the national tournament, as you said, who's better prepared? The kid who was 10-2, or the kid who was maybe 5-5 and then wrestled a hell of a schedule and been in the wars? You know what I mean? And I certainly have the perspective with our kids that, us going into nationals, I don't care what the records are looking like, you're prepared. You've wrestled that schedule, and this is what it's going to take over the 3 days, to get to the podium. So, but your point's well taken in terms of how are they going to seed? How are we going to figure out who's there? Do some really good kids get left behind? That's probably the worry of every coach anyway, about, coming out of something like the Big Ten and what the records may look like.
Yeah. And Ersland, I was going to add, and correct me if I'm wrong, but historical data is going to be strongly considered in national seedings. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, they're going to give us the number of qualifiers based on the past 5-year average, of historical data. That's how that's going to be measured. I'm interested to see how it comes out, though, because you've got some teams not competing. So what do they do with conferences where, the Ivies, for instance, are not competing? So how does that factor in? I'm not quite sure yet. Where you're going to see this maybe really affect things, though, is going to be in your wild card selections. Okay. Now, they're going to have some consideration. I think it was top 16 seeds. I don't have it in front of me, but I think it was top 16 seeds from last year, and then top 8 from 2 years ago. It will be a criteria for, for APR wild card selection. Excuse me. So, that's where it could be interesting, because how do you measure a kid who's, like I said, has a few wins? Let's say Aguilar is just outside and he's a top 20 kid, but he didn't qualify outright. He had a tough tournament. Maybe he's sitting there with a losing record. How do you measure him against, a kid with a much better record, say from another conference? That's I think going to be a tricky deal, because you won't have the sample size, as Earl had mentioned, that we typically have.
Yeah. And then, as Earl brought up, he talks about freshmen and the fact that they're not going to have any of that historical data. They may have a couple decent wins this year. And so you're going to have to, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how the committee decides to factor in data from this year versus data from previous years, and try to marry the two things up to put together 33 guys at every weight.
Yep. Well, in the meantime, I think most people are getting their matches. I haven't looked nationally, but it's a race to 4. You need 4 matches to fill that coaches ranking things, which starts after this weekend, right? And we've got a couple guys that don't quite have their 4 yet, right? They just returned last weekend. A guy like Griffin Perriott, I would mention, that's a guy who's been ranked top 10 before, but he's got 2 matches. He's at 2-0 right now, and you need to get him 4 because you want him in the coaches ranking for each one if you can. There's more chaos if a kid's not in there and then he pops in at the very end of the year to get his 4. It's a moving kind of a target. So for us, it's been, let's get our 4 matches in, and then time to train and peak, for Big Tens.
Absolutely. Earl, you said initially on the show, you talked about, Purdue wrestling is a program you like to follow. I've seen you at a lot of tournaments as we've been out, and you've always been a fan. What is it about Purdue, and what is it about our program that we're doing that makes you follow, that has made you a fan?
Well, I just like to see the gradual rise every year in the program under Coach Ersland. So, you like to see programs heading in the right direction. I appreciate a team in the Big Ten that, is moving up. You had Penn State with Cale Sanderson. They came, they kind of flew up, but that's kind of the aberration. It's not easy to move up in the Big Ten. So I have a lot of respect for, a school like Purdue that has gotten better. It seems like every year the recruiting classes get a little better. There's a little more star power. And again, we did a social media ranking for signing day this year, and for the media, it's cool seeing a lot of different features about the program. I'm sure the fans and alumni, they appreciate it. So seeing, someone outside of the coaching staff that engages fans, alumni, media, again, that makes it fun being able to click on that information instead of, having to search for it.
Yeah, no, and I'll take this opportunity to thank both these guys on here, right? Corey and Tanner, they spearheaded that. So we appreciate you acknowledging that, right? I think wrestling deserves that attention. And I feel very fortunate to be at a school where these guys value the sport and want to really promote our student athletes. So I thank you. Obviously, Earl, you do a tremendous job, and that's why you're on. But these 2 guys, feel very blessed to have them helping promote this sport to the people.
And as I told Tony this year, I gave Tony an extra thank you this year. This year's recruiting class was hands down the easiest to find information on. And I think that speaks to the caliber of wrestler that those kids are. And also, the type of kids they are. Those 3 kids, they were, every day they're in constant contact with me and the staff, on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. We talk to them often. They're very responsive, and they're all very accomplished. And so being able to find all that data and being able to package it in a way that fans could consume it was easier than it's ever been before. So hats off to Tony for going out and getting some good kids to say yes, and getting those guys on board. That was a fun deal you put together on that, Earl. And I thought it was fun to see what some of the other schools did and how they worked that out to promote their kids too.
Yeah, and that got me a little bit of vitriol from different SID departments and stuff like that, and coaching staffs who take a lot of pride in that. But it was good.
It's kind of like rankings, though, Earl. You can't please them all, can you? No. It's kind of like rankings.
No.
So,
I wanted to jump in here, Earl. You've been doing this for a little while now, and I don't know that there's anything that's evolved as much as the internet, social media, the live streaming, television coverage, the BTN coming on board full go with wrestling. Just how much have things changed in your day to day, and what matters versus what doesn't? You're doing social media recruiting rankings, for goodness sake, which is freaking awesome, but also not only didn't exist 5 years ago, but social media didn't exist 10 years ago. Like, how much has everything changed, and has it made it easier, harder, both for you to do your job?
I think it makes it a lot easier in terms of, being able to engage with the coaches, the athletes. I'm sure, maybe you guys would feel differently as far as, sometimes with the athletes being able to engage with media and fans. Generally it's good, but maybe it has its downfalls here and there, or potential hazards. But, overall it's great in being able to, just see if you put out a little excerpt of a takedown and sudden victory, you put that out through the team account, that's fun. That gets a lot of run. So, I think that's great. And I like to see the schools that kind of really lean into it and see the value in it. I think that, as wrestlers, we kind of have a mentality that we're going to go out there and prove it on the mat and, let our work speak for itself. And I've learned through my experiences in the real world that not everybody else in the world feels the same way. And you do have to, let everybody know your accomplishments. You do have to, get people in the arena to watch the match. Well, in a normal year, you would have to get people in the arena, give them a reason to come to matches, have a cool promotion, something like that. And I think that, a lot of wrestling coaches maybe didn't see the value in that 10 years ago or so, but it's fun seeing that now.
No, that's good. I mean, count me among those guys that just, you want to keep your head down and you want to, you want to recruit and then you want to develop. So again, it's good that you have people like Tanner and Corey who look out for that side and see the value. I mean, like I said, you count me old school in that. I mean, I'm a convert, right? I'm a convert. I understand the value and why we need to do it.
I'm dragging him along, kicking and screaming. He's coming a long way.
That's right. I retweet stuff now. I don't tweet a bunch, but I'm a champ with that retweet button. I'm good there. So, but no, I think you're absolutely right. You got to invest in that side. It's, you're dealing with young people and branding. And even as you think now about, name, image, likeness, right? Those things coming down the pipe with the NCAA rules. I think that's going to play a big part too. I think it's the world we live in, and you got to embrace it. And for me, change how I think about it.
Well, speaking of change, let's jump topics and let's look back at the weekend that was. Boilermakers went out to tropical Piscataway, New Jersey last weekend.
Always great this time of year.
Yeah, no, it was a whirlwind trip, 36 hours. We beat the storm out. We beat the storm coming back. So we got really lucky from a weather standpoint. Went 1-1 out there, losing to number 15 Minnesota, but beating number 20 Rutgers for the second straight year in their gym. Tony, kind of what were your overall takeaways from the weekend and some standout performances that are worth mentioning?
Yeah, I mean, as a coach, you can get caught up in the negative, and I'm still trying to figure out Minnesota a little bit more. But I'll say this, to have the guys respond, we challenged them after the Minnesota duel, and I'll talk more about that here in a minute. But to challenge them and to have them respond and beat a good team like Rutgers in their gym, minus the fans, obviously, but still tough. You're in the rack. Was good that we ended on a high note. We kind of turned it up and responded, and they did a good job being able to walk out of the gym feeling better about the day. So kudos to the kids for responding in the right way. With Minnesota, I just feel like we got beat to the punch a little bit too often. We lost 4 1-point matches and had another close match in there. Was it 5? 5-1. I mean, that's the duel, right? And we just were always getting beat to the punch. And so I just really felt like we were a little stagnant, maybe a little stale. Our energy, our enthusiasm. The word I used with the team the other day was, man, you got to compete with enthusiasm. And we just didn't get our motor running enough early to win those 1-point matches. You know what I mean? Certainly a high point is Tom Penola, still rolling hard, doing his thing. He's a guy that I think people are going to more and more become aware of. I really feel like he's a tremendous kid. And if you follow like Earl does, he's, he beat Aiello out at Omaha. You know what I mean? He beat Traxler. Now Traxler's up at heavyweight, but another very good kid. So I think, Penola continues to show that he's going to be a factor. And we've got a lot of really good kids, but when you're short, on that many 1-point matches, you're not going to beat, a team like Minnesota. And so it's got to be, we gotta, the details, from the warm up to the mindset to the energy, the energy on the bench even. And I know it's tough when you lose a couple matches in a row, 1-point matches, and Devin usually does a great job of getting our motor running, but it just seemed like we were a little too reserved. We needed to be creating our own energy more than we did. There's no fans in there to get you going. And usually the rack is great for that, right? There's people in there calling you names and getting after you, and you can feed on that. But I just felt like we were a little flat, and we've got to do a better job for creating our energy and creating, competing with enthusiasm. I think our team did, like I said, they responded well, and I want to give them credit for that. We got to learn from that. We cannot come out flat because you're not going to necessarily get a second chance, right? Is at the end of the year, you put your foot on the line at Big Tens, you got to be ready. You can't come out and start slow. So we got to learn from that.
How hard is it, Tony? I alluded to it in the recap, and we've talked about it. Like, you look at the team score with Minnesota, and it's really easy to be, disheartened and negative and kind of upset about it all. But then, that duel was a lot closer than the final score was. Like you said, 5 1-point matches. Devin Schroeder was 5-4. Emil Sundlin was 4-3. Max Lyon was 6-5. Like, these were all matches in which, we scored takedowns. We scored, there was some offense for our guys, but just a little short. So how hard is it to not get caught up in the final score and understand that, the margin was this much?
Yeah, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, right? Like, it's easy to get caught up in this fixed mindset, right? Like, you let a result kind of place, whether it was a good performance or a bad performance. And let's be honest, you can win and have wrestled terrible, right? I mean, and so, I don't want to just look at it just from a win-loss perspective. To me, it's easily fixable. You can easily flip it around. You know what I mean? And in matter of fact, it's a couple of finishes, really. I mean, you think we gave up a first period takedown at 141 with Phileas. He was in on the leg 2-3 times at the end and let finishes get out of bounds on him or let a guy kick out. Kendall Coleman had the leg up on Brayton Lee late in the third, down a point, could have been the match there, takedown and a ride out. So no, these things are easily fixable, but the fact of the matter is I didn't feel like we were ready to go early enough in the match. Those matches were won and lost on the first takedown in the first period. And it shouldn't happen that way. That's not acceptable. Our guys understand that. And their response, like I said, was good. It was good on the Rutgers duel. And then their response in the room yesterday was good. So I think, they understand, that where they fell short, and they'll right the ship. But no, it's not a thing where you look at it and you're dejected because, the score was very lopsided. I think it's more like, hey, we're better than this. You're disappointed and we got to fix this. And so, our goal, we've got Iowa, coming out of the gate on Sunday, man, when you put your foot on the line, you got to be ready. You got to be ready for a hard 7. So that will be where our mindset lies.
Earl, similar question for you. Obviously, very different vantage point. You look at a duel like that Minnesota duel on Sunday, where the overall team score was lopsided, but like you said, 5 1-point matches. How does that, how is that consumed externally by the media? Do they dive in and look at the close matches, or is it just the team score that kind of like jumps off the page and you check a box and move on?
It's funny because I kind of had the same question for Coach Ersland that you just had about the 1-point matches and such. So, the score jumped off the page at me, but I'm going to look at each box score and see how it played out. And you have those close matches. So, the score looks bad, but it was much closer than the score indicates. And as far as, team rankings go, I gave Minnesota credit with the team rankings, but not so much, dropping Purdue down. And, at the same time, kind of a lot of the teams that were in that area where Purdue fell, they kind of had their losses on the weekend too. So that kind of contributed to not much changing in the rankings.
Yep. No,
How much go ahead, Tony?
Well, I was going to say, that's Big Ten wrestling. We talked about it on an individual level, right? And I think we've mentioned it in the past. This team, and you've got to do it. So I'm not lobbying for anything other than the kids need to understand it. It was a one match difference for us, with Illinois, right? We're ahead by a point going into the last duel. If we lost a match on routing time, if you take that away, you have a win over Illinois. If Devin Schroeder just wins and doesn't give up the fall, we beat Wisconsin. You know what I mean? We have a win over Rutgers. So the margin, right? It comes down to the details as it does for the individual. It will come down to that for Devin Schroeder, Kendall Coleman, whoever. You've got to fix these things. You don't ignore them. You don't just say, hey, we're close, and then you just go on with life. No, you address why you were short, where you were short, how you were short. You address it, but from a confidence standpoint, from a focus standpoint, you don't let it deter you. I mean, if you just look at the box score, as you said, that jumps off the page, but you got to show a kid, how we fix this, right? There always has to be, here's the plan of how this turns this result in your favor, and that can mean the difference in the world. I mean, I'll use an example. I learned this early in my career. Jesse Whitmer, which I think his story is well documented, right? 1 year in the lineup. He had been tech-falled earlier in the year from a young man from Michigan State, right? And it was all top, okay? And the guy got on top and he rolled him up, and that was it. That was the dual meet against Michigan State. We saw him again at nationals and had fixed, he had fixed some of the bottom things that he did. He wrestled a much cleaner match, and he's on, he's past him and then on to the semis and the finals, and he wins the title. So, it's about having perspective on what you're doing, right? It's not just, well, it was a loss, and so that's what it is. You know what I mean? I don't think that's indicative, obviously of our team, but those are the things that you need to look at when you're addressing your kids and how you make things go the direction you want to.
Absolutely. You talked about bounce back performances. You talked about the bounce. No bigger bounce than that of Devin Schroeder. Took a loss 5-4 in the opener to Patrick McKee, comes back and gets what ends up being the decisive pin in the Rutgers duel. Rolls up Nick Aguilar, built a 13-0 lead before sticking him. Did that really set the tone for us in that second duel? Obviously the points ended up being the difference, but like how did that work for the team?
I think, like I said, I was very unhappy with our energy from the bench, and this year with no fans, you have to build your own energy, and so I think that definitely contributed, right? Like he comes out, he gets the fall, he gets the things going. Jake Rundell follows up with battling hard, right? He didn't give up bonus there. Parker Filius really wrestled a very strong match against, Rivera, right? Competed very well, was right there. So there was a tone that was set early in that duel that the guys kept, following up on, okay? And everybody went out and battled hard, where, like I said, we didn't do a good job. The next man up has got to go do his job. He's got to fight. He's got to do his job. And the wind kind of came out of the sails, especially I think, Alec White pops his knee, there's 6 more going against us. And so you just felt like the guys, they lost a little steam, and we needed to have steam. You've got to have all the energy you can have against, good teams in the Big Ten. So that's the lesson these guys need to learn. You know what I mean? They need to stay into the duel and still realize the best way you help your team is when you put your foot on the line. You got to be ready to rock and roll, no matter what's happened before you got there.
Exactly. Tony brought up Thomas Penola earlier, and I'm really curious to hear Earl's thoughts about Thomas. Thomas 5-0 on the season. Cracking into the rankings at 197. Spent last year at 285, where he was a national qualifier. where do you see a guy like Tom fitting in, Earl, on the national scene?
Yeah, I mean, he's one, 197 is kind of a weight class where, I don't know, maybe it cleared out a little bit with, some of the seniors. And I really like to see a guy that competed at a higher weight the previous year, then coming down to the new weight class and, kind of shows, and not only competed at the higher weight, he had success there. So I think it shows a certain kind of toughness and, determination. And I think that's really going to serve him well. I think, 197 is a weight class where you do have, opportunities to move up. So I really could see him moving up from his current spot. Personally, I'm really interested to see how the Jacob Warner match against Iowa goes. That's really going to be a good barometer of where he's at right now.
Yep, no doubt.
Corey, I know you're a big Thomas Penola fan. What have you seen from Tom this year that as opposed to last year, that has you excited and has his prospects up?
I think he's relentless. He's kind of always attacking. He's sort of got that mentality. He's like he doesn't have a reverse. He only knows how to go forward. He doesn't really have a neutral. He only knows how to go forward. And it's just so exciting to watch that, especially in the upper weights where you can be really good by being kind of stagnant, to see somebody who's always, to coin the phrase, always aggressive. It's
dynamite drop in, Corey. Way to work it in, buddy.
I got you, Coach. It's really cool to see, and the fact that he's just still, so young. I'm excited to see where his career continues to go from here.
It's easy to forget that he's just a sophomore, right?
It is, yeah.
Him and Kendall both. I think because we're so wrapped up in it day to day, and we see these kids every day. To think about the fact that we have, maybe 2 to 3 years of both of those kids left is kind of crazy and also really exciting. A couple notes about Tom, just leading the team in takedowns so far this season with 22, leading the team in bonus points wins. He's got 2 majors and a tech, leading the team in total points scored, margin of victory. He is, you threw it in there, the titular line, always aggressive. Tony, he's bringing it. He's a man on mission. What have you seen from Tom?
No, he's a guy who he's mastered what is maybe the toughest part sometimes for people of the sport. He's willing to wrestle hard through everything. He doesn't have, when he goes out, he's not thinking about, am I going to get tired or, what this or that, right? Like he just wants to wrestle hard through all of his positions. And he's starting, as I've said before, to add more leg attacks. Clearly last year at heavyweight, him being a very small heavyweight, usually weighing in around 217, 218, going underneath those big boys was not the prospect. So he had to rely on hand fighting and controlling ties and find ways to score, maybe late when they're tired, not moving their feet. He's started to figure out how to add in his leg attacks sooner and put points on the board. And like I said, he's mastered kind of, fatigue. He's not worried about it. He's just going to go wrestle and compete. And hey, we'll see where we end up. He has that courage to go do that, where some kids want to hold back and try to get through, and he doesn't carry that out there with him. So, he's got control of the mind and knows he can push hard through lots of situations.
I remember talking to Dylan Lighty last year, and he pointed out that Tom Penola, it clicked for him somewhere in the middle of his freshman year. He's like, Lighty said it took me 3.5 years to understand the right approach, and Penola already gets it. He's so far ahead of the game in that regard mentally.
Yep.
Any other standout moments from the Rutgers duel from you, Earl, or from you, Tony, that bear mention?
I mean, listen, for me, it was the kids rebounded. We've still got a lot to work on. You know what I mean? There's some things, I guess I'm always thinking about where we need to, situations we need to fix. We left some points out there. situationally. We didn't wrestle, some of the tougher moments like we want to. So no, I'm happy that we competed hard. I think, you got to wrestle hard, you got to wrestle smart. And so for us, kind of, fixing some of those situational moments, I think about Max Lyon. He was in the room actually right before I came up here, with you guys. He was in the room this morning. He took a shot from open space in a tight match, and gave up the easy go behind, and he's willing to wrestle hard. It's just understanding what the moment calls for and trusting it. And so that's where I'm at. I mean, I'm happy that the kids, like I said, they responded, and they should be proud that they did, right? But at the same time, we got to buckle down and work on some of our situational wrestling, because we're going to have lots of situations coming our way this weekend that we're going to have to win in tight matches.
Earl, any other moments from the Rutgers duel that you wanted to talk about?
In addition to, the guys that you've covered already, seeing Griffin Perry in the lineup, that was good. And then the freshman Garrett Ninehouse, going out there, him getting a shutout win. I've been paying attention to the freshman, and, I'm familiar with him being on the East Coast. So, I liked seeing him getting a win as well.
That's why it's good to have you on, Earl. So you'll find some good things, right? Like I'm stuck in, I got to fix this, and we got to do some shit. I got to watch we got to do some stuff better, right? So
Or you got to cover, right? You can bleep that out.
No, we're leaving that one in there.
Yeah, you take that out, Corey. Hit the bleep for me, buddy. Put the black bar over my mouth or something, will you? But no, that you're right. It was good to have Griffin Perry back and go 2-0. He's back in there. He's, like I said, he's got a chance to get his 4 matches this week, and be eligible for the coach's rank. Garrett, what is he, 3-1 now, I believe?
Yes.
So you're right. A young guy in there who's competing hard, and learning as he goes. So those are all, you're right. Those are all good, solid moments that we can build on.
Earl is Earl's rankings are the lone national rankings to take notice of our young man, Mr. Ninehouse, this season. He's got him in the top 33 at 165 pounds, up a spot this week, as a matter of fact, from 32 to 31. So hopefully some other people start to take notice as he gets into this season a little deeper. Big weekend coming up. We got top ranked Iowa, number, I believe, 11. I haven't checked this week's rankings to see where Ohio State is, but the Buckeyes are coming to town as well for a tri-duel. Lots of BTN coverage. They're going to cover our duel with the Hawkeyes, and they're going to cover the Hawkeyes and the Buckeyes. Lots of eyes in there. And then we'll wrap up the day, courtesy of our man Corey Palm on BTN Plus against the Buckeyes. Going to be a long but great day of wrestling, Tony.
No, it's exciting, especially to be back home, right? 2 weeks on the road now. As you said, we battled the weather and in and out with Rutgers. So really excited to be back home, and you just got to value every opportunity, right? I mean, if we've learned one thing in this pandemic, it's tomorrow's not granted, you know what I mean? So we've got to value it, and that's what I'm looking for. I want to see that enthusiasm out of our guys. You don't know how many opportunities you get, so you've got to take advantage of everyone. So just really excited to be back in, and look forward to the opportunity to test ourselves.
No shortage of great matchups on the docket for this weekend. Earl, any that stand out to you that you're especially looking forward to, that you want to see out there on the mat?
I mean, I mentioned Warner and Penola at 197. I think 157 with Kendall Coleman and Caleb Young. I think they had a 1-point match and then an overtime fall at the Midlands. So, those guys are right there with each other. That's a guy that, he's going to be fighting for a spot on the podium. Caleb Young, tough guy, good contrast to styles. So, that's one that I'm really focused on. Yeah,
we could go on. Like I said, there is no shortage of great matchups this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun. We have the limited attendance of the friends and family of the home teams that'll be able to be in there. So hopefully we get a little bit of atmosphere in the gym, but it'll be great that we're able to stream all those and get national television coverage to be able to watch some of those matchups. Corey, any other matchups that are on your radar for this weekend?
We saw it a couple times last year, and we all know what a buzzsaw Spencer Lee is. But I'm looking forward to seeing how Devin goes out and competes with him. If he can continue that growth, like you say, and stay in that match, compete, and keep himself a chance to win. That should be a good one. There's a couple challenges within Ohio State as well. There's good opportunities. Hopefully we get a chance to see a guy like Sammy Sasso wrestle for the Buckeyes. That could be fun. It's just like you said, there's a lot of names. The lid lifter on Sunday morning is the one I'm most looking forward to see that competition.
Absolutely. And Devin Schroeder also, he should have an opportunity to match up with a red hot Malik Heintzelman from Ohio State. He's got wins over a bunch of guys already this season that he had previously lost to. And so it'll be fun to see Devin get out there with him as well. Great lineup at 125 between the three duels. Action will get started at 11:30 a.m. live on the Big Ten Network with Purdue and the Hawkeyes. Anything else, Corey, that we have missed or skipped over today?
I don't think so. No, I think we got everything on my checklist. Earl, thanks for joining us again. This is fantastic. I've got a million questions, but we've already gone almost an hour, so we'll save those for another time.
Oh yeah, I really enjoyed it. Anytime I'm down to talk.
Appreciate it, Earl.
Oh, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, that'll do it. We'll see you Sunday from Holloway Gym when the Boilermakers take on Iowa and Ohio State. Until then, we'll catch you next week. Boiler up. Oh my God, that was a horrible sign off. Oh well, whatever.